I hope that today's stories about St. John Bosco convinces you of two things. One, that miracles were a commonplace occurrence in St. John Bosco's life, as is the case with many other saints. And two, that Don Bosco wasn't the only saint of the oratory, for there were students who, through the grace of God, were able to read Don Bosco's mind. The Miracles and Prophecies of St. John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. The young men sometimes told a trustworthy companion about some warning they had received, but Don Bosco never shared these warnings with anyone except the specific person seen in his visions. This practice assured him that many of his young men habitually lived in the grace of God. For this reason, Don Bosco placed a great deal of trust in the prayers of his boys. When someone went to him to obtain some grace, he sometimes replied, "I will have my boys pray." Prayer offered in common and aloud acquires a marvelous power that grows greater by reflecting the devotion and holiness of those who pray. In the oratory, many young boys could be described as twins of St. Aloysius because of the candor of their souls. Indeed, in some of them, charisms marked their spiritual growth. While celebrating Holy Mass one day in 1857, Don Bosco fervently prayed to ask the Lord to enlighten him on how to carry out one of his projects. When he returned to the sacristy, the boy who had served Mass kissed his hand and said in his ear, "You're thinking about such and such a thing. Do as you think, for it will succeed well." Don Bosco asked, astonished, "How did you know that? Who told you?" The child became upset and stammered a few inconclusive words, and Don Bosco didn't insist on an answer. Don Bosco had many such surprises. These showed how he and his students formed one heart, and their prayers worked wonders. To these, Don Bosco attributed the efficacy of his blessings. Joseph Rayano stated in writing that a student who was a native of Ivrea was suffering from a hernia caused by a rupture. Often this ailment caused him severe pain. Unable to stand, he was obliged to stay in bed. One day he found himself so ill that he gave no more signs of life. He seemed dead. The doctor was hastily summoned. He rushed in and judged all medicine useless, saying that a prompt operation was necessary. Having arrived at the sick young man's bed, Don Bosco called him by his name, passed his hand lightly over his forehead, and said a few words under his breath. The bystanders didn't hear what he said, but he probably invoked Our Lady and made her some promises. Then he recited a short prayer. The sick young man at that moment opened his eyes, which had remained closed up to that point. He looked at Don Bosco and smiled. All pain had ceased on that very day, and he rose from the bed. Don Ascanio Savio further testified, "My brother Angelo, a Salesian, told me that one day he went with Don Bosco to see a man who was seriously ill. Don Bosco blessed him and said, 'Get up and come and have lunch with the others.' The sick man believed it was impossible. He didn't know what to do and was hesitating, but Don Bosco insisted, telling him, 'Put on your clothes and come to lunch with the others.' Trusting Don Bosco's word, the young man dressed and went to lunch in the common refectory. My brother added, 'I was astounded, almost not believing my own eyes.' My brother was quite seriously ill. He never hastened to believe extraordinary things when the evidence of his senses didn't compel him to do so, but he was cured. Signora Valauri was a great benefactor of the oratory and a widow of a distinguished doctor of medicine. She begged Don Bosco to implore Our Lady for the grace to experience her purgatory in this life. She felt terror at the thought of the punishments suffered by those who were not quite pure enough to enter the presence of God. This idea upset her completely, and she couldn't overcome it. Don Bosco promised to pray and had the community pray also. Behold, the good lady was overtaken by excruciating pains that lasted 2 years. When these pains passed, her heart felt a tranquil peace. Every fear of purgatory had dissipated, and she died without illness. Don Rua also bears witness to this account. These and other facts narrated in previous episodes that are even more marvelous remind us of the life of Blessed Oringa, recounted in the Catholic Readings manuscript as follows. Who was not overcome by wonder when considering the grand spectacle of the empire God has granted to his saints? Beloved children of the Father in heaven share in his power and reign with him. In this way, they show the earth how dear virtue is to the Lord. All understand the imminent voice of the miracles. With a powerful voice, it says to all, "Here is the way that leads to life. Follow, O mortals, the glorious footsteps of the saints. They show us the path of glory, the path of happiness." Who would dare resist such an openly divine call? Alas, there are those who smile with compassionate doubt when they hear these marvelous facts, which form the halo with which God crowns his saints. Poor blind listeners, they love the holiness of those heroes and admire their moral conduct, but they doubt the miracles. Are not the saints living miracles in and of themselves because they heroically and constantly practice virtues that exceed poor human strength? Oh, you poor listeners who reject the idea of miracles. Do you not see that miracles are found everywhere? Miracles are found in the sacral man, composed of 1,000 marvels. They're found in the natural world, full of inexplicable phenomena. Are there no miracles in religion, the center of all wonders and mysteries? Can you understand how sensible Christians are frightened by the word miracle? Yet don't you profess faith in the three persons in one God, in a God-man born of a virgin? Don't you believe that this God-man was crucified, died, and rose again after 3 days? Don't you worship this same God in our tabernacles and believe that he descends from heaven miraculously, called to our altars by the priest? Don't you know that water regenerates us through baptism, that the Holy Spirit gives us strength in confirmation, that the Son of God made flesh, true God and true man, is united to us in the most divine sacrament? Don't you believe the truths that make up the doctrine of religion? And then you Christians fear miracles. You want us to be slow and cautious in believing and publicizing them. The saints easily believed in miracles, which is why they worked them. They believed in miracles as if they saw them for themselves. They didn't even try to gather proof of them to see with their own eyes, for our God is the God of miracles. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you'd like to see a series of videos which recount all of St. John Bosco's miracles, just click on the playlist I put on the screen. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you.